Okay, let's get started then. These are introductory questions to how the EIA API works. First question is, how many data catalogs are within the EIA API? "14 catalogs. If we observe the following picture, here we can see the IDs that represent the codes that we need to put in the URL to access different types of data. If it's coal energy data, if it's electricity data, natural gas, petroleum, there are many data catalogs that we can get access to from the EIA API. Next question. Where can we find the energy generated by solar technology? There is also a code where we can find this data of energy generation. RTO. This is the most common code that we will access within the API. See that Valley got some points. There, within the electricity, we have this many data catalogs because there are nested categories. Okay, you don't have all the data available unless you access the nested structure of the API. And here you have retail sales, electric power data, RTO, state electricity profiles, and each one of them provide different type of information. And the last one is which is the limit of rows from the EIA API. This one you must know, Ignacio.
Yeah, yes, the only one.
$5,000. Like if we query information to the API, the first response that it will give us is until 5,000 rows. If we want to get more data, we need to use a for loop that I will show you how to do it later. Okay, and so on, also share the link here. There we go. So let's get started. Can you see the website? No.
No, it's still Kahoot.
Okay, so let me share again. I can finish the Kahoots. The winner was Fatih. Fatih, have you, no, it's Mr. Blee. Have you worked with the energy sector before, Mr. Blee?
No, your tutorial.
Okay, good.
So I just did that, and we got the 800, 1,000 rows. That's all I did yesterday.
Nice. Today we will dig deeper here. So do you have experience with Python?
Yeah, I teach computer science.
Okay, fair enough. And energy sector?
0.
Okay, good. Is there someone who has some experience with Python? Because what I normally do in my sessions is take one person to have some dialogue and guide the session with that beginner mentality so that we can all learn a lot of things and tricks. So are there any volunteers, or I can pick someone up randomly? You don't count because you are a teacher.
Yeah.
Maybe Fatih?
I'm not sure I'm the best candidate, so if anybody
Do-
else volunteers.
But why do you think so? Because as you worked with Python before?
Just I'm coming from R and
Okay, fair enough. So you are the one
okay.
chosen. And don't worry, like any doubt you have, any mistake you can commit, feel free to do. I'm here to guide you through. And the rest, you can ask any question in the chat. If it's relevant for the topic that I am teaching at the moment, I will cover it. If it's not, I will leave it at the end, okay, for Q&A. So if these are the rules, like you can ask me anything that has to do with the topic of energy, data preprocessing, visualization. We are going to use main Python libraries such as Plotly, Pandas, Matplotlib, also maybe scikit-learn. And these are the types of questions that you may ask me, like Python tricks to solve a practical case that you can think of while we are developing a case. What would you do if you wanted to have X results with Python, etc. Here you have some links that I put as an example. Streamlit web applications. If there is enough time, we'll try to develop a web application using the EIA energy data. And then here you have the tutorial that I shared with you, where we have some tricks to work with the API and know where we are at. Okay, the official websites from the EIA API, where you can see all the information structured without interacting with the code to check the data that you are working with. And now let's open Python from Okay, so let's put the tutorial to the right sites to have some guidance. Now, Fatih, do you know what we need to access information from an API?
Yes, the request library.
Okay, so if I access the request library here, then I can access the function with the dots. I have a list of all of the functions within the library, and the get is the function that I can pass the URL to query the information. If I press Shift Tab, I get the help of the function, and inside the parentheses, it tells me that I need to pass an URL. And we can ask ourselves, which is this URL? So it's the one that the EIA API, like EIA API, tells us. In this case, this one. It's on the official website. If you want to look it up later, you will see all of the information and documentation related to how it works. Now, I can pass the URL to the one that I had created, and then I execute. And then, Fatih, what do you see there?
There is some response, but I don't know what it means.
This means that when you request information to an URL, you get some codes like, have you ever gotten like 404?
Yes.
Not page found. So these are the types of codes that you will get to see if they validated your call to the URL here, because sometimes they don't allow you to access the information in the URL. Now, if I want to see the content inside, I would save it into a variable like res, for example. And then inside here, I can access the information after the dots. And if I put the content and I execute, I will see that they tell me error. The API key is missing. What is this? What I have shared with you in the tutorial, that we need it in the params function. So I can use it from here. And now I need to create a variable for the API key, which I will share it now. I'm going to share the API key here, but this is not something that you would do because you would keep it private. Like, it's associated with my email. So if I surpass the limit of requests, they can cancel the account, but anyway, I can create a new one. But this is something that you would not put here in the code, just as a warning. Now that I have put the params, what shall I do, Fatih?
Now combine the first and the second line.
Okay, so I can get here and I can pass the params. And now if I execute, I get the response, and here it's 200, which is a good response. We have the data. Now, if I see the content, I get it here. But you see that it's not well structured, right? It's very messy here. So to solve it, we should normally have it as a JSON. We execute, and there we have the information better structured. Good. Now, Fatih, how can I watch this information in a table?
Read it with some panda function, I guess.
Okay, because instead of having the information in this structure, which is a curly bracket here, and then it has a nested way of putting the information, we should have it on a table. To do so, we always look for the pandas function because it's the library that works with data tables. So if I want to build a data frame, which is the common name for data tables in Python, we access data frame class, and then here we pass the data, which is the information that we get from this line. So we can put data equals to the JSON, and now in the data frame, we pass the data. We execute, and there we get the information. Nevertheless, it's not as structured as I wanted, because do you see the answer, Fatih? The problem here?
I see there's missing values and stuff, so we need to fix
Yeah.
it.
And you see the columns, response, request, API version, Excel, etc. That's because the data has some keys, which are response, then you get insights, and you have all of this information. But if I would have gotten inside the request, I access other type of information, right?
Right.
So I need to access the information within this dictionary that has the same structure in a way that I can build a proper table. To do so, I need to put here another bracket and access the rows where I have each one of the IDs. So I can put here the routes that I have a common information. And now I can see here ID, ID, and ID. Now, if I build the data frame from here, I execute, and then I have the table of the nested structure in the EIA API. Good?
Mhm.
Okay, thanks for the advice on how to keep the private API key. Now, how can I see the generation of energy from the EIA API?
Good question.
Yeah. Remember that you have many data catalogs, and then here we would like to access from all of them the electricity. So I can create a new variable with the endpoint electricity, and now I pass it to the URL base to build this new URL that will be the one to pass in the new request. I can go up and take the same data. There we are. Now we get the information from the, after converting the data to a JSON. Press JSON. Electricity. I'm having all the same data set again after querying the information. If I pass the data, okay. I had here the URL base instead of the URL that we have composed now. So we execute, we get the data, and there we have new information. So you see the nested structure of the API. Now, if we want to access the energy generation, we need to access the RTO. So this is something that we would put inside the endpoint again. So endpoint, electricity, and also RTO. Now we execute, we get the new routes to the API, the new data catalog. We execute, and there we have new information. In here, Fatih, where do you think we have the energy generation?
Uh, Can't say, sorry.
No worries. You see here fuel type data
Mhm.
in this code. There are many access points and ways to structure the data within the energy sector. Here we can see by region. I don't know if you're aware of how it works, the US energy or any grid, but let me check that I had. There we are. So you see that we have here in the United States, the information categorized by fields, also from all solar, but we can change the data set to be like consumption, retail sales of electricity, and these many other types of categories. So if you are going to develop a project, you would just take one of them and keep building the data analysis from one of them. Then you can replicate. In our case, we are going to work with the fuel type data to see if we can build some data visualization and see how the energy sector works in this data catalog. So again, we pass the information here, the fuel type data. We compose the new URL. We request the information. We get the JSON, and now we access the routes. But here we get an error, because if I access the data, now I don't have inside the response anything that has to do with the routes. I have the ID, which is the ID we used, fuel type data. And then inside we have frequency. We have some metadata about the information, how it will be structured, but there isn't a way to get the hourly generation by energy source. To do so, I don't know if you read the tutorial, but there is a trick in the API that if you want to access information, let me check here, you need to pass the data component. Otherwise, you won't get access to the data. Therefore, in the endpoints, we need to pass if we want the data or not. We put it here. Also need to be followed by a slash. And now we request the information again. We execute. And now we can see the information well structured. How can we put this information into a table, Fatih?
The same way as before, I guess.
Okay, now where do I access? I can put pandas data frame. I pass the information from here. But if I execute, it gives me a value error because the structure of the data doesn't follow a pattern. You just have here warnings on one side, and then on the other you have other entities. Which is the entity we need to build the data frame? Can you spot it?
Nope, sorry.
No worries. Yeah. So if you get the response, where is the data being repeated on the structure? For example, you see here period, right?
Yeah.
Is it repeated later?
Yes.
Here, right?
Yeah.
So there is where we have the pattern. Now, how can we access this information of the period? Through this entity, right? Data.
Right.
So we see that after the response, we should put data. And there we have it. This is what you normally do whenever you get a response from an API. Look for the repeated structure in the data so that later on you can build a data table. Good?
Yeah.
Now let's see, have you done some data visualization in R?
Yes.
Okay. So can you think about some data visualization that could be interesting from here?
That's
We
a
have-
time series, I would
Yeah.
say. Yeah. We could do
Because
a
we have
time series.
time information. And which question could we ask ourselves? For example, normally I wonder always which X category had the highest value on something. Okay. But do we have any values here?
Nope. Just categorical variables, fuel type.
That's a problem because in the call to the API, we need to tell if we want the values or not. So can you spot here that in the parameters, we need to pass this other one,
Yep.
data and values. And sometimes in the API, you have information which is prices. So you need to put here the prices instead of value. Otherwise, you won't get the information.
Right.
Good. Also, guys, the rest of you, if you want to ask questions whenever it prompts, feel free to drop them in the chat. I will take care of them and showcase it to you. Good. Now, how can we put this in the params? We can pass a new parameter here, and we pass the value. Now we request the information, we put it into the JSON, we build the data frame. Do we have the value now?
Yes.
Good. Now, which X category had the highest value? For example, in fuel type. How can we see the many fuel types that we have? Do you know how to, Fatih, you told me that you didn't work with Python or a bit.
Right.
So whenever you want to do something in Python, you need to find a function, okay? And the most common way is to put the dot and then the tab, and then you look for the options that you have.
Mm-hmm.
But not working now, no. And now, because we want to access to a function that will do something with this column to see how many fuel types there are, we need to access the column. And now we work with only this column. Now, if I want to access functions to process the information of the column, I need to follow the same pattern, the dots, the tab, and now I can see a list of all of the functions, but sometimes it takes a bit to load. Let me check field type. Okay. It's taking a while. Later we will see. So the function we would call now is value counts to see the different types of energy. But here we only see the abbreviation, the code. If we want to see the full description, the full name, instead of using the fuel type, we can use the type name. And then we need to remove the dot. And then here we can see natural gas, hydro, solar, coal, other, wine, petroleum, and nuclear. Let me know in the chat which one do you think has the highest generation. If it's natural gas, coal, petroleum.
As United States, so probably gas or oil or coal, fossil
Let's
fuel.
check it out. Do you know which operation we need to do? In R, you may have worked with dplyr, right? Or
Right.
tidyverse. So here the names of the functions are probably the same. You see that we want to access each category of the fuel type or type name and sum up the values, right? To see the total generation by each fuel type.
Yeah. So you group by
That's it. So now, if I access the function here, how do you think the name of the function will be called?
I hope group by.
So let's check it out. I start with the G, give me an R, there we are, group by. And because we apply this approach, it's more likely that you will remember the function in the future so that you don't need to think too much about programming, but about solving the real problem and
Cool.
creating the visualizations, okay? Now there is another trick that if you don't know what to put inside, as I told you before, you put the shift tab to see which parameters you need to place inside the parentheses. So you here see the by, and is by which column do you want to group the information? So in this case, the type name that contains the information of the categories petroleum, wine, etc. And now we access the value column because, well, I will explain later. We access the value, and now here we apply the mathematical operation, which is the sum. We execute, and there we get a whole mess. What happened here, Fatih?
We didn't sort it.
More than sorted, you see that all of the numbers are concatenated.
Right.
That's because if you put too many numbers and now you put any others and you apply the sum, you see that they are concatenated, right?
Oh, yeah.
But if we remove these quotes and they are now treated as numbers, now they are summed up, right?
Right.
That's it. We are adding strings. So how can we spot if this is a string or not? We access the data in the data frame. Then we see the value column. And there we can see that the type is not a numerical, it's an object. If you see objects in the data type, it's because it's likely to be a string, okay?
Mhm.
How can we change the column to be a number, an integer number?
As float or as int or something?
Okay, remember that before I told you you need to access a function to change the data.
Right, Python, sorry.
So how do you access the function? You put the
dot.
dots
Yeah.
and the tab, which is not working now. I don't know why. Let me check. Well, we can leave it here. Normally, I don't know why it's not working, but normally you should have here, after you put the dots, press the tab, and then you should have some help. So now we would use the function as type to use it as an integer. And now here we can see that is an integer number. If it's a decimal, we should use the float, okay?
Mhm.
So now, if still we sum up the values, it's not going to work because this change I have just applied momentarily. I need to overwrite the information, and now I sum up, and then I have the solution. Good? Now, would you like to see the information, Fatih, in numbers, or is it better to create a plot to see the big differences visually?
However you like, I guess.
How would you do it here? Let's save the result, for example. How would you plot the information?
Just a bar chart or something, or pie chart or something.
Okay. How do we access the function?
I don't know.
The same as always. The dots, the tab. That. I think I'm gonna, because normally, well, I'll check later. But let me do one thing. If I can solve this out. I'm gonna restart the kernel. It's not gonna work. Okay, never mind. So if you didn't know how to work with this trick of using the dots, you would normally go to Google and there is a proper way to ask. For example, in Python, we work with objects. So if we know the type of objects that we are working with, we can ask to Python, and then I can put type of the result. And here I can see pandas series. Therefore, if I go to Google, I can put pandas series because they are the first name, which is the name of the library that the object belongs to, and the last one, which is the name of the object. And now what you wanted to do is a bar plot. So you put here bar, and even Google gives you the information on how to use the function. And now from here, you can see that it's series, plots, and bar. Therefore, you can use plots and bar, and because it's a function, you put the parentheses, executes, but we get an error. Whenever you get an error, you go to the bottom and see what's going on. Here is that we are missing a library. We can install it here, matplotlib. We use conda install the library. Another error. Well, let me do it with pip. I need to check. I'm gonna use this one. Okay, there we go. So now we can see that, as many of you said on the chat, that natural gas is the highest. But now let's see if we can explore some other questions with the data sets. What else can we do here? I'm gonna ask some other person now. Thank you, Fatih, for interacting. Like, if you want have any other question, like, let me know in the chat as well.
Thank you.
Let's see. Brent.
Yes, sir.
Good. You told me you were the professor?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you know a bit of Python, but you don't know about energy. What would you like to do if you had this data set? Or like some type of data visualization?
I'd like to know by region, like maybe a heat map.
Okay. Have you ever
So
done
what if Texas has a lot of energy and we sell it and North Dakota needs some, like a supply and demand, or who has the most or something?
Nice. Have you ever done heat maps with Python, or well, I call matrix heat matrices? Have you ever done it with pivot
yeah,
tables?
a long time ago I did, not recently.
Okay, so this is to do with pivot tables. Like you have the information in a long format where every column corresponds to one variable, but now we want to have, for example, in every row, one unique respondent, which is the area in the US. And then in the columns, each type of fuel types. How can we access the function to do pivot tables? It's the same trick that I told Fatih before. If you put the dots and then the tab,
yeah.
How do you think is the name of the function to work with pivot tables? I've already told you the name. If you start with the P, pivots, there you have it.
Pivot tables, yeah.
That's it. Yeah, pivot table.
Yeah.
So now, if we want to know how to use it, we put the parentheses and ask for the help.
Yeah.
Which is the first parameter? Values, which is Python asking for the numerical column where we want to apply the mathematical operations for aggregation. Basically, the value that we have here. Now, the following parameter is the index, right? Do you know in pandas what the index means?
Yeah, basically the key or the lookup column or the left. Sometimes it's 0 to whatever, or it has a value. Yeah.
In the index, they refer to the rows. So they are asking for basically which categories do you want in the rows uniquely. So we wanted, for example, the respondent name to have for Carolina, how many hydropower was generated. So in the index, we put the respondent name, and then in the columns, because we want to see the categories of field type, we use the other column, type name. Place it here, and then we execute. And there we see the values. Okay. Let me, because we have too many information here, I'm gonna abbreviate it so that we can see it better. I'm gonna use the respondents and field type. Okay, fair enough. Well, we have a lot of respondent names. What else can we do here to create the heat map or matrix map? If we save it in a variable, we can access the properties of the style. Have you worked with these ones, Brent?
No, I've never done style.
So if we do a style, we get into the properties to format the table, the colors, etc. The most common function that we use here is the background gradient, because it will color each one of the cells based on the numerical value. So if I execute, there we can see some data color darker and lighter. But there is a lot of pre-processing to do here because there is a lot of numbers. To abbreviate the solution, I'm gonna put the field type as the index and the respondent as the columns. So I can use here a transpose, and then I can see the information better. Good. What else can we do here? For example, there are too many non-values. What would you do with the missing data? Brent?
Well, you could isNA and delete them, or
If we delete
default,
them,
or you could default to averages or something.
that's it. In this case, because it's energy generation, normally it's because you don't have with nuclear energy generated in this respondent. So it will be 0. So we can fill NA. And sometimes if you don't remember these functions, there is a trick to find them without knowing it before. You see that what you had with the operation you want to do has to do with NaN. Therefore, if you start looking for functions with Na, here you see a lot of them. Now, what I want to find is to check if it's Na, drop Na, this is to delete them. And here I can see the fill, which is give me a value to fill the missing data. So I can put here value equals 0, and then I have the zeros instead of the missing data. Why we needed this? Because instead of having these black cells, we can pass the fill 0, and there they would be blank. Sure, Mohammed, ask a question.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I wanted to ask if what if there was a non-values in respondent column or a field type column?
If there was non-values in which column?
In field type and respondent.
Okay. They would not appear in the index, neither on the columns, because
Okay.
they are not available. Good.
Can you set the number of decimals?
Sorry?
Can you limit the number of decimals to just one?
Okay, yes. So I don't know if you have done this with pandas, but to not have all of the information packed up in the same line, we can surround them with the brackets, and then we can go line by line here. And I am doing this because in the style, you have many functions to style the data. One of them is the format. And then here we can put precision 1 to only
Nice.
have one decimal.
Nice.
Now there is another problem that, for example, you see that this is the darkest value, right? The 560. And has the same level of darkness than this other value, which is 1,500. The darkest is here. It shouldn't be here, right?
Yeah, so it's by column or by row, right?
That's it.
Needs to be by everything.
Because we are coloring the data based on this parameter, background gradients, we need to access some of the properties, but I don't think, gosh. Nope. Also, let me tell you another trick. Now, if I am trying to access the help, here I don't get it. Like it just moves the indentation. I can save all of this result here. I can put a name, df style. And then if I access the background gradient, here I can see the help to see which information can I put inside as a trick. So if we execute, we see that the problem of the dark colors. What is this parameter, you think, Brent?
I see some V-mins and maxes and some G maps. No, that's sequence.
Here, right? There is a thing which is the axis. In Pandas jargon, the axis is, do you want to apply this function by columns or by rows? If you see down here, axis, 0, 1, 0 index, 1 columns, or none. Because by default takes 0, they are coloring based on the highest value in the columns.
Yeah.
If we wanted to do it by the rows, we would use a 1. And now here we can see that there is some area that produces the most energy in the US. This one. US 48. Yes, because there are many areas of energy generation. And here the US 48 is a set of many of these ones, I believe. Like it has many of generations summed up in this category.
Is that the same as saying lower 48 when we would travel internationally, or
that's it?
We would call it lower 48.
That's it. It's lower 48.
Okay.
Yeah. That's something that I was researching today because it didn't make up some visualizations I was creating. But yeah, normally I would use this one, the US 48, to analyze the full data set, which we will do later. So there is now a way to put it this instead of rows or the full data set, we can use the none. But in here, I'm gonna do it the operation with fewer columns so that we can see some differences. So if I wanted to, for example, filter some data in this operation, how would you do it? For example, let's take the first 5 rows. Would you know, Brent?
Sorry, say that one again. I was looking at my own
To
lab.
take the first 5 rows.
Oh, first 5 row. You know, 0 colon 5 or something.
Okay. So normally when you want to select specific parts of the data frame, you use the lock property. But if you use the iLock, it's because you want to do it by a numerical number, because I is from the integer. So you can put here the 5 and then execute.
Yeah.
But there is a problem because we get only the 5 rows, but we want the 5th row, but we want to get from the beginning until the 5th. Therefore, we need to use the second column here.
Yeah.
From the beginning until the 5. And also, Mohammed, as you said, we can use the heads 5 here. Good. So now that we have figure data, we can see a better map heat matrix. So let me rephrase this like short, but no, yeah, let's do it here. Short. Good. And yeah, what I was telling you before, that if we do by 0, we get by the columns. If we do it with 1, we do it by the rows. And then if we use none, we get the complete heat map. And also, as Brent said before, we should use the format and then pass axis none here. And there we go. Good. So which other type of information can we do of visualization with this data that we have here? Let's play around a bit with the datetime column. Are you good to go for more questions, Brent?
You can ask other people. Otherwise, I would like to plot, like during the day, is there more electricity at 8 a.m. than 5 p.m. or something, right?
Okay, so is there more? Okay, yes, I was going to go with that as well. Let's ask now, which was the person who was asking at the beginning? The girl, the name, how it was?
It's me.
Okay.
Vali.
How is it pronounced? Your name?
Vali.
Vali. Okay. So have you worked with Python before?
A little bit.
Okay. So now we want to work with the periods column because it contains datetime.
Yeah.
Which is very important because we want to see if at certain hours there is more electricity generated by one type of energy or another.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the first thing you would do? Do you have the column of the hour?
First thing, I wanted to see whether it's a string object. I want to see the type of the.
Good one. So we put D types.
Yeah,
and here we see
it's an object, so
object.
we have to convert it into datetime.
That's it. So to convert it into a datetime object, we go to the pandas.
Yeah.
Would you know how to find the function here?
PD dot datetime vielleicht.
Okay. And between this to datetime,
I think
then we pass the period.
the period, yeah.
And now we have the datetime formats. We save it back into the variable to save the changes.
Mm-hmm.
And now we could get the information of the hours, right?
Yeah.
How can we access the hour?
You can separate this, but I forgot that.
Okay.
DF dot something like that, or like you can separate the dates and.
For example, I could do periods, and then I access the string functions, and I can split the data with an space. But there is a problem. There is a problem here that I'm trying to use string functions, but
it's not correct because it's not a string; it's a date.
That's it. That's it. So instead of using the string property, can I use another one? The datetime.
Something daytime, yeah, DT.
That's
Oh,
it.
yes, 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 yes.
So now here I can access all of this information. Like I can even see, tell me the day of week
Mhm.
and even the weekday. I don't know if we will tell me the name, day name.
Day name.
So
Okay.
you can get any information with these functions built in pandas.
Mhm.
But what we do here is to access the hour. We execute, there we have it. Now we get the data frame, but we don't have the columns, so we create it,
We have to create.
hour, and
Yeah.
then we put all of this in
Mhm.
here. There we go.
Yeah.
Now, if I want to see which type of energy produces more at a given hour, what would I
think
do?
I have to group it. I mean, like
Okay, let's go
again,
with the
group
group by.
maybe from the fuel type. I mean,
Okay, so fuel type.
and then
Also the
Oops.
hour, because
yeah,
I want to
also
know
yeah.
by each hour and fuel type how
Mhm.
much
Is
energy, which is in the column value,
value. Yeah.
was generated, the sum.
Mhm.
But here, instead of using the sum, I would use the average because it's a more accurate representation, because there may be some peaks at some point in certain hours because of the day or some technologies. So I would use the average, and then here I get the result. But there is not how I would picture to create a matrix map, right?
Yeah. I don't know what to do.
Okay. There is a good trick here, because we could have used the function pivot table
Okay.
with the index, for example, fuel type, then
and
in the columns,
Mhm.
the hour, and in the values, the value. And then to aggregate the data, the average. And there we have it here. But what you did here is also correct. We could also work with this result. And the good property here is unstacking. So we use the function unstack, and then we go with the hour, and voila. There we go.
Okay.
So these are good tricks. This one I found out very recently, actually. And it's a cool one because sometimes we start thinking about the group by because we have too many categories. For example, if you would have another category to group the information, for example, the respondent as well,
Okay.
instead of using the, let me check, the pivot table, I think it's more comfortable to use the group by, and then here we could unstack by the hour so that we have the column. Or, for example, fuel type in the columns. And there we go.
Okay.
Good. So now let's continue here. I'm gonna show you more Python tricks. So let's say that we want to focus on the solar energy. By each, well, in 1 hour, well, in one area, sorry, in the US 48. Remember that in the
Yeah, it was the highest.
respondents,
Yeah.
we have too many values, and the one we wanted is the US 48 that contains the area within the US, the terrain. How would we do that?
I have no idea.
So you see that the information of the US 48 is somewhere in the middle here, right?
Okay. It's in the respondent. Okay.
That's it. You want to get
Okay.
all of these columns, right?
Okay.
So you need to
Okay.
think that because you want to access a part of the data, you don't want to process the data, you want to access a part of it, that you need to use the lock property, okay?
Locate.
Because
Okay.
you are locating the data.
Okay.
Okay. Just Brent, I will later share it. Now, in here, we have multiple access. This is the hour, the respondent, and the field type.
Mhm.
3 layers of indexes, we could say.
Yeah.
So we need to separate them accordingly. X, Y, Z, for example.
Mhm.
But now we need to ask, do we want all of the hours? Yes. So we put the column. Do we want all of the respondents? No, we only
No,
want
it is
the
only
US.
US 48. Yeah.
So we put it here.
Okay.
And do I want all of the columns?
Yes.
Also, yes. So the column. We
Mhm.
execute.
Mhm.
There we go.
Okay.
So this is a good way to access the
Locate
data. And instead of having it in this way, we could use the transpose. Well, let's have it here. Now, how can we do the heat map? So we go df, let's say US 48, go with the style property and the background gradients. Now we would need to
fill all the
fill the NA with
names.
0. And then I can put all of this here. Well, I can do it actually inside here. There we go. Now we would use also the property we had worked out before, axis none. Sorry. And now we can put all of this inside the quotes and there we can see by each hour which technology generates the most energy.
I think you can transpose it because it's not
Yeah.
looking nice.
Also
It's
in the
how
formats, we could use precision 1.
one.
Yeah. But there is a problem here.
I think why can't we make the
Yeah.
columns to rows and rows to columns or
Yeah. So we can use the
transpose?
transpose. Yeah. And also we can divide by 1000. So we have the data in gigawatts per hour. Can be easier to interpret. Now there is something that doesn't add up here, which is there are too many zeros. Like if there wasn't any energy generation in here. The highest value is this one at 10 p.m. because there isn't any other energy generating technology. And that's natural gas, which is understandable. But I would have expected the sun to be on these
Highest
hours
during the days, okay.
during the day. Yeah.
Mhm.
Probably this happens because in the original data set, we don't have too much information of the
Okay.
days. If I go with the periods and make a sort values, I see that I have the data. Yeah. So there is an unequal distribution of the data here because I can also, for example, let's go with the field type and then respondents. Yeah. Like here, the data, it should be hourly, but it is not.
Yep.
That's because we have the limit of the 5,000 rows.
Mhm.
And this is something that in the API is not, it's very hard to find out, because we need to pass the information how we want the data, if we want to be sorted, etc. I don't, what time is it now? Yeah, I think it's a bit late now. So I will cover this in the next session probably, on how to query a full date range that is properly ordered, and we can see that there are not too many zeros here, because it doesn't add up that during the day there are too many zeros here. Probably it's because we divided by the 1000 to have it in gigawatts, but still we are having very few data here. Okay, one question to address it in the next streaming. Good, guys. So are there any questions that you would like to address before leaving? Like, they can be anything related with Python or anything that we have covered today. Feel free to take the mic. Also, Brent, you told me if I could save the notebook. Yes, I will do that later. I will also
that's
share
great
it.
because you move quickly.
Yeah. Also, it's recorded in case.
Yeah,
that
you
want-
need to. You have to go quick. But I was trying to keep up on the right, and then you get out of sync, and then you're out of sync.
Okay. Because are you writing the code at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay. That's another
And
thing.
it
that I
happens
don't-
every day in my classes, right? I'm typing.
Okay.
We have 40 students, and 8 are out of sync. It's just too. You can't go
Yeah.
so slow that everyone keeps up. Otherwise, it's too slow. But it would be
Totally.
nice to have all the cells to see one by
Yeah.
one how to step through.
I will do that. What I want to do with this session, like streaming, is like I pretend to do this on a weekly basis, based on a tutorial that I publish every week, so we can add more valuable content. And this is something that I will do for the next one. I will sort this out and show you how to do heat maps with electricity data the following week. Also, any more doubts? The rest of you? Good. So guys, let me tell you here about what we are doing. So I'm doing the live streamings to showcase my style of teaching. And also I have an academy where I have many courses in case that you would like to join. That is the website. I tell you here a bit about the story. And then in the buttons, you can see the offers, etc. Then if you would want to see the practical courses that we have, which are covered everything step by step, you can click in the link, see the contents, like we explain everything as I've done here, step by step, and with blank notebooks. We have also for algorithmic trading, many contents. And if you want to get access to the materials, is 50 euros per month that you can see on the click here, in case that you want to dig deeper into Python programming and create a portfolio of exercises and practical cases. And also we are doing some tutorials and free content every week. Like if you go to Datons.ai in YouTube, you can see the channel, which is the streaming we are doing today. And I am publishing some of the lectures that I have recorded, as well as some short videos explaining some concepts, if you want to take a look at that. And then for the tutorials that I am publishing every week, if you sign up here, that I can, in this website, datons.ai, you will get anything that I publish every week, so that you keep up with the content that we are publishing. And Last but not least, if you found this valuable, please consider to support our work. Here you have the link, and it's been totally a pleasure to have you today. Any doubts that you want to address or that hasn't been addressed in this workshop, I'm having a Reddit community, which is also in this website. You can go and click on forum. And here you can ask any type of questions related with Python programming. Also, what I value the most about my teaching is the way that I approach the solutions of the exercises, how I make you think about to access the function instead of Googling all the time and asking ChatGPT, because it ultimately drains our reasoning and we end up copy pasting everything, which is not really productive at the end of the day. But if you want to know more on how to apply this methodology on any practical case, let us know in this Reddit community that I have created, and I'll be glad to share with you my experiences and the methodology. So guys, as I said before, totally a pleasure, and I'll see you around next week. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So much. Bye.
Thank you so much.